A very long time ago, our ancestors whispered legend of a place where the very walls seem to conspire against you, where time itself stands still, a twisted puzzle of passages that's stretched until the edges of your sanity, and sometimes beyond. At the heart of this maze, hidden in the shadows, awaits a monstrous secret. Some survivors claim they've heard a creature, snorting and growling, just around the next corner. When it moves, the earth moves with it, further twisting passages behind you, making your escape ever more unlikely. The Minotaur's Labyrinth is a tale so old and widely told, its authorship cannot be attributed to any one person. The story has passed through so many lips, each person adding their own flavor. Maybe a historian added the spiteful king of Minos, who hated his beastly son. Maybe a playwright invented the 7 sons and 7 daughters delivered from Athens each year as a tribute to the Minotaur. Maybe a bard invented the brave Theseus, the warrior who would eventually slay the beast. There will never be one version of this tale, but the maze and the Minotaur are constants, and everything else in the story is centered around them. The Minotaur was said to live underground, in a labyrinth not unlike the other labyrinthine structures common to ancient Crete. And he was so angry and so powerful that he could move the earth with a stamp of his foot. This was an important detail, as Crete is no stranger to earthquakes. Imagine yourself living in a time centuries before anyone had ever even thought of the phrase tectonic plate. The ground suddenly begins to shake. You've never experienced anything like this. It's terrifying. And even after it stops, you continue to wonder, will it happen again? What did it mean? Am I safe? Now, imagine a kind old woman laying a hand on your shoulder to comfort you. She smiles. She laughs a little. She says,
"Oh, it's just that old Minotaur having another fit. It'll pass. It always does."
In the internet age, we have a new labyrinth legend. We call it the Backrooms. If you haven't heard of the Backrooms before, the forum post that first imagined this place tells you everything that you need to know.
If you're not careful and you no-clip out of reality in the wrong areas, you'll end up in the Backrooms, where it's nothing but the stink of old moist carpet, the madness of mono yellow, the endless background noise of fluorescent lights at maximum humbuzz, and approximately 600 million square miles of randomly segmented empty rooms to be trapped in. God save you if you hear something wandering around nearby, because it sure as hell has heard you.
Okay, I should give a quick bit of vocab here for those of us who aren't terminally online gamers. No clipping is when, in a video game, you glitch through solid objects like walls instead of going through the door like a civilized person. So entering the Backrooms begins with a moment of unreality, where the physical world behaves like the digital, just for a split second. Once you've entered the Backrooms, you're surrounded by the iconic yellow wallpaper, fluorescent lighting, and cheap office carpet. This unassuming story and eerie image captured the imagination of the internet. Thousands of people have imagined an entire world down here, with different settings and entities. Like the Minotaur's Labyrinth, we cannot attribute it to one person, which might be what makes it feel so much more real than a typical scary story. The Backrooms are a result of a decade of ideas within the internet horror community, and it begins with creepypastas. The term creepypasta is just a mutated way of saying copy and paste, something you might do to share an especially good forum post. Copy and pasting was central to old forum culture, and so it was memeified to copypasta. Eventually, copypasta mutated into creepypasta to describe a horror story written from a first-person perspective. Creepypastas were often centered around an invented monster or villain, ideally something with striking imagery that could inspire a lot of fan art. The first truly successful monster in this movement was Slenderman. In fact, Slenderman got more than a little fan art. He got games and very popular web series, all based around his mystery. He even got a movie that was so scary, no other studio has ever attempted to adapt another creepypasta. Since then, creepypasta has evolved. It's gotten organized. The SCP Foundation is a collaborative writing project contained in a single wiki. SCP, or Secure, Contain, Protect, is a secretive organization tasked with containing and studying mysterious SCPs. Stories are written by individuals, but all collected together in a single wiki, united by format and tone, making it feel like an actual collection of some shadowy organization's paperwork. SCP-087 is an unlit platform staircase. Stairs descend on a 38-degree angle for 13 steps before reaching a semicircular platform of approximately 3 meters in diameter. Descent direction rotates 180 degrees at each platform. The design of SCP-087 limits subjects to a visual range of approximately 1.5 flights. A light source is required for any subjects exploring SCP-087, as there are no lighting fixtures or windows present. Lighting sources brighter than 75 watts have shown to be ineffective, as SCP-087 seems to absorb excess light. Subjects report and audio recordings confirm the distressed vocalizations from what is presumed to be a child between the ages of... The source of distress calls is estimated to be located approximately 200 meters below the initial platform. However, any attempts to descend the staircase have failed to bring subjects closer to the source. The depth of descent calculated from Exploration 4, the longest exploration, is shown to be far beyond both the possible structure of both the building and geological surroundings. At this time, it is unknown if SCP-087 has an endpoint. The professional tone was a refreshing change of pace from the creepypastas of yore, which usually lacked a certain verisimilitude.
The man standing in front of the mirror was dead.
Many contributors have continued on to prolific writing careers. I'd recommend QNTM's book of short science fiction stories. But internet horror wasn't only focused on writing SCP. Imagery has always been a big aspect of creepypasta, and cursed images were becoming more and more popular. At first, cursed images were just pictures of the scary guys your creepypasta was supposedly about. Over time, one-upsmanship led to more and more extreme images and more digital manipulation. Eventually, cursed images became more comedy than horror. As a backlash, another subculture emerged, this time focused on subtlety. These new cursed images weren't focused on subjects, but places. Not about inspiring instant fright, but slow, burning dread. These would later become known as liminal spaces, and they've been everywhere in the past few years, and they are deeply linked to the aesthetic of the Backrooms. The original Backrooms post was in an early version of one of these liminal space threads. It happened on a 4chan paranormal board, where folks were prompted to post disquieting images that just feel off, which neatly describes one of the unifying qualities of liminal spaces. So, on one hand, there was this picture and premise from the cursed images community, and on the other hand was the widespread success of group authorship projects like SCP. So once we combine them, we get... The Backrooms Wiki is a collaborative writing project that explores the concept of the Backrooms. Contributors create stories or descriptions of environments and things in the Backrooms.
Level 0 is a non-linear space resembling the backrooms of a retail outlet. Similar to its previous form, all rooms in Level 0 appear uniform and share superficial features such as a yellowish wallpaper, damp carpet, and inconsistently placed fluorescent lighting. However, no two rooms within the level are identical. The installed lighting flickers inconsistently and hums at a constant frequency. This buzzing is notably louder and more obtrusive than ordinary fluorescent humming, and examination of the fixtures to determine the source has been inconclusive. The substance saturating the carpet cannot be identified. It is not water, nor is it safe to consume. Linear spaces in Level 0 are altered drastically. It is possible to walk in a straight line and return to the starting point, and retracing your steps will result in a different set of rooms appearing than the ones already passed through. Due to this, and the visual similarities between rooms, consistent navigation is extremely difficult. Devices such as compasses and GPS locators fail to function within the level, and radio communications are distorted and unreliable.
The text in the wiki is then used as reference material for yet other creators to make videos and games. And these works are of varying quality. Some, perhaps you watching this video, might say that the Backrooms are ruined by these works. I see where you're coming from. Did Peppa Pig really need to go to the back rooms? This kind of rules. Maybe she did. There are two rival factions in Backrooms literature. You have the mainstream crew, who maintain a meticulous wiki of all the levels, entities, and mechanics of how this imagined space works. Then, there's the r/true Backrooms crowd, who feel that too much ink has been spilled on the lore, that this place should remain unexplained, and trying to organize or create taxonomies and wikify this space has ruined the mystery. But where does the great scholar Katie stand? I hear no one asking. Well, I'll tell you. I like my backrooms varied, with lots of levels and weird geometries, and I like the promise of there being someone around the next corner. Maybe an entity I'm scared of, or maybe scrawlings from a fellow traveler. But I don't really care for being chased around, or having to worry about collecting almond water, or whatever. Those are my backrooms, which I guess puts me loosely closer to the r/true backrooms crowd, but I take issue with that name, true backrooms, as though the idea has some kind of purity that must be maintained or protected. The parodies, lore, mechanics, none of it can ruin my appreciation of a larger cultural experience. There is enough room in 6 million miles of office space for all of us. Maybe I don't like survival mechanics in the backrooms, so no, I'm not going to enjoy that backrooms game. That doesn't mean that the other works are ruined for me. I possess the mental flexibility to allow the existence of multiple versions of a fictional space. Just like how Michael Bay didn't ruin my childhood by giving turtles lips. What's most important to me is that amateur creators who found a motivation continue to feel empowered to keep creating. While the Backrooms Wiki keeps clacking away on their keyboards, maybe they'll come up with our next really cool horror idea. Or maybe true Backrooms will. Or maybe both sides will. Something like the Backrooms backlash has happened before. We just talked about it. Remember how the cursed images movement got more and more exaggerated and reliant on shock value? That led to the subdued cursed image thread that inspired the backrooms. In both cases, we had an initial idea that became wildly popular and evolved in a way that some people didn't enjoy, thus spawning an even more interesting idea. In both cases, the same creative instincts were at play. I need to rely on the master for this one. Steven, can you help me out?
The 3 types of terror. The first, the gross out. The sight of a severed head tumbling down a flight of stairs. It's when the lights go out and something green and slimy splatters against your arm. Second, the horror. It's the unnatural. Spiders the size of bears. The dead waking up and walking around. It's when the lights go out and something with claws grab you by the arm. And the last and worst one, terror. When you come home and notice everything you own had been taken away and replaced by an exact substitute. It's when the lights go out and you feel something behind you. You hear it. You feel its breath against your ear. But when you turn around, there's nothing.
Stephen King's taxonomy of terror provides a helpful framework for understanding how an artist can manipulate fear. He not only breaks it into 3 categories, but he provides a hierarchy as well.
I recognize terror as the finest emotion, and so I will try to terrorize the reader. But if I find I cannot terrify him or her, I will try to horrify. And if I find I cannot horrify, I'll go for the gross out. I'm not proud.
I can understand how, when a creative community begins to rely too heavily on horror and gross out, it eventually inspires some frustration.
Don't be lazy.
You scared?
Startled isn't the same as scared. Anyone can bang pots and pans behind someone's head. That's not scary, it's just startling.
We read a story someone else has written, watch the author go for the cheap thrill, but we're another creative person with cool thoughts and ideas of our own, and we see a potential for terror going untapped. So we haul off and start our own thing, where terror again takes the forefront. My favorite version of the Backrooms, the one I'll spend the rest of this essay talking about, is almost exclusively about terror. A sense of unease and dread. But why? Where is that dread coming from? If there's nothing chasing us, what exactly are we afraid of? A liminal space is an architectural term that describes an in-between space, like a vestibule or a hallway or a foyer. The word liminal alone means in a state of transition between two things. A teenager is in a liminal phase between childhood and adulthood. Sunset is a liminal moment between night and day. When liminal space was first applied to spaces that, architecturally speaking, are not liminal, there was some pushback. But language is malleable, and so now liminal space is understood to describe these disquieting images. Because we desperately needed a new phrase to unify them. Liminal spaces aren't united by any visual attributes they share, other than maybe being from the 90s and the noughts, but by the feeling we get from looking at them, the affect they generate.
Affect is a notoriously slippery concept. This is perhaps not surprising for a concept that seeks to encompass something as complex as the forces that inform our emotional states. But the forces that inform our emotional states, may be the most basic definition of affect shared by most approaches.
Affect is inherently a nonverbal experience. We don't always have the words to describe our entire emotional landscape, all the different affects we're experiencing at once. So, liminal spaces came to define the unique cocktail of affects they inspire. Quiet, disquieting, nostalgic, eerie, peaceful, uneasy, untouched, familiar. In that sense, liminal is the perfect word. These places are metaphysically liminal. The images themselves exist in the threshold between contradictory feelings. This all might sound a little abstract, but I think that's exactly why the Backrooms took off. They take a difficult to verbalize abstraction and make it concrete, with literal concrete. Liminal spaces may attract us, but we don't really have words to talk about why. We just like how it feels to look at them, to stew in the contradictory feelings they give us. It's like a sweet and sour candy for our soul. So what do humans do when they want to spend more time in a specific affective state? We write a story about it. The Backrooms turned liminal space into a hook for a story, something you can engage in, an excuse to wander around these places, to explore them, to obsess over them. What makes this particular gumbo of feelings that we're sipping in the Backrooms so intoxicating? The affect that liminal spaces inspire is one I've felt before. It reminds me of running errands with my mom when I was still a really little Katie. Sometimes I'd get lost. One moment, she's right next to me, and suddenly I'm alone. Oh no. At first, I'm looking around, waiting for her to return, but then I realize what I do next is entirely up to me. What's around that corner? Will I find her there? Will I find something exciting? It's that amalgam of extreme loneliness, freedom, and fear unique to the situation that I instantly recognize when I see the Backrooms. The Backrooms beckon us. We want to explore, but we might lose everything and everyone we love in them. And yet, we're still drawn forward, compelled to stare at them, make stories and games about them, just to spend a little bit more time in them, even if it's just virtual. So let's spend that time. Let's look at 3 different backroom stories and see what affects unite them. Perhaps the most influential contributor to Backrooms media, Kane Pixels is a 3D artist and filmmaker, and also a literal teenager, when he made his YouTube web series. And I can see why this took off. This series centers around a research organization that discovered and is now exploring the Backrooms. The series is a mishmash of different kinds of media, from footage of hazmat suit-clad explorers to hyper-realistic 3D renderings of liminal spaces to autopsy reports. Thinking back to media that was really popular when I was Kane Pixels' age, I'm blown away. not only by his craftsmanship, but by how popular it is. If this had come out when I was in high school, it would have been dismissed out of hand as slow, boring, and if we're lucky, for art snobs only. So I guess us art snobs won the day. I think my favorite part of the series is this presentation made for a government grant. In it, the research organization exploring the Backrooms is proposing to monetize and develop the space. I love seeing how they attempted to decorate these architecturally bizarre spaces, as though you could live in them with those big, puffy leather 90s couches. It makes a cold kind of sense. A lot of Backrooms and liminal space imagery is of malls, food courts, places designed for consumption, all abandoned and disused. We're a for-profit organization to encounter them. Of course, they'd try to make a buck off of it. And after all, the infrastructure's already there. But the idea sits wrong with us as we watch the proposal robotically lay out its logic. While many in our society have nowhere to go, sending them to a place called the Backrooms is inhuman. Kane paints a picture of a world where the economic solution consumes the human one. And as we realize how close this is to our current climate, we understand this is what terror feels like. In other entries, we find some of the souls who are lost in the Backrooms. These individuals are mostly in their teens and 20s, and things never end well for them. In one case, we meet an amateur filmmaker who backs up in just the wrong way and falls into the Backrooms. He wanders, lost and alone for most of the video, until this black, twisted entity finds and chases him to his presumed death. In another case, the researchers come upon a young man who seems to have starved to death wandering the Backrooms, his corpse slumped against a wall. Both these encounters force us to confront how dangerous this place is, and the many ways it can kill you. Both men, or are they boys, are anonymous victims. The Backrooms isolate and consume them, and meanwhile, the outside world continues on, uncaring. The researchers weren't looking for them. No one is looking for them. We have no reason to suspect they're missed.
Anemoiapolis?
Anemoiapolis is more than a made-up nonsense word. The game takes its name from the Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, a book that attempts to define the modern melancholies that we know but have no words for. A quest to define new and novel affects. Anemoia means nostalgia for a time or place one has never known. And the nostalgia of Anemoiapolis is alluring. It is the most beautiful entry in this list, and also the furthest away from the sickly yellow walls of the Backrooms, though they of course make an appearance. It's completely decoupled from the research and no-clipping depicted by Kane pixels in the Backrooms Wiki. You are an electrician, called out on a job in an empty field. You walk by a giant billboard advertising the Anemoiapolis project. You begin your work, and then you just kind of fall through a trapdoor, like a cartoon character. You spend the rest of the game wandering through the complex constructed by the Anemoiapolis group. The overworld is a dead mall, and the game doesn't shy away from depicting its spaces as beautiful, desirable, and fun. Anemoiapolis also contains a malicious entity, but it's very different from the Kane Pixels scribble monster. Its presence is barely felt. It seems to live on a different plane of existence from us. We see it in a mannequin moving to face whatever direction we're coming from, or a shadow on the wall. For my money, this is the best depiction of a Backrooms entity and most effective moment of horror I experienced in my backroom spelunking. Watching this shadow of a man moving towards me, unknown scribbles frantically moving around him, the sound of static getting louder, levitating, slowly, inexorably being pulled toward me wherever I am. What will happen when we meet is unknown, but not a question I want to answer. Any humanity it possesses is mere simulacrum. This is a decidedly inhuman force that will consume me, given the chance. The inhumanity of this environment is underscored by the dead mall. Vaporwave music plays distantly overhead, soothing and numbing the anxiety of being trapped. It's interrupted only by an automated voice.
Please wait for 5 elevators to arrive.
Giving me confusing and vague instructions I have no choice but to follow. I am wandering the carapace of a failed promise of consumption. The electrician I play as does not wonder if anyone's looking for them. At the end of the game, I escape in an elevator, only to be sent back down by a woman.
You know, of all the people who went down there, you're the first person to come back out. Unfortunately, your knowledge of this place is a liability.
Wait, what are you talking about?
You can't leave just yet.
The only other person I encounter in the entire game. And I only hear her voice. I want to escape, but I'm alone again, and no help is coming. And there's no suggestion that anyone in the outside world even knows I'm gone or much less cares. Andy's Backroom series is the least well-known entry on this list, but I found it a compelling watch for a few reasons, so I had to include it here. Our cameraman starts his journey by taking out the trash. When his trash can falls through reality, he moves in to inspect it and finds himself falling through with it. Before long, he comes upon this outdoor mall. As we see this empty expanse and listen to the wind howl, it's made clear to us right here at the beginning that we are alone. Repeatedly, the cameraman encounters physically impossible spaces, like a freestanding door that opens to a hallway that isn't behind it. One thing I really love about this series is the plotting. The cameraman almost always has a clear objective he's moving towards. This is a difficult thing to pull off in a backroom story, as listless wandering is part of the appeal and the terror. Eventually, our cameraman comes across a line of tape on the ground, which at least gives him a direction to follow, but there is still the mystery as to where the tape is leading him to. We are always given another reason to keep watching. I think that's something that's often missing from the meandering nature of Backrooms media. While this series is less about the commercial spaces that some Backrooms imagery represents, it instead emphasizes the lost and lonely feeling of wandering them. An empty, dark, infinite strip mall with howling winds makes clear to us in no uncertain terms, you are alone. We come across a sign that reads, "You will not be found beyond these barriers." He finds a room littered with paper that, on closer inspection, are missing persons posters. This is the first and only time I found evidence of the outside world searching for Backrooms explorers, and yet it didn't inspire hope. Many have been lost in the Backrooms, and their missing posters are here, discarded on the ground. All these discarded faces staring back at me makes my fate clear. Many Backrooms enjoyers grew up at water parks, malls, offices, cul-de-sacs, and pools, just like these. However, with significant economic downturns coming at a regular cadence since 1999, many of these places no longer exist. They are our childhood, but they're no longer accessible to us, or any children we may decide to have. Much like how the financial milestones that our parents were able to achieve, like buying a house, are now far less accessible to us today, it is simultaneously attractive and mournful to wander around the ruins of a beautiful future we will never have. Of course, these spaces are empty. No one's allowed to grow up here anymore. Surrounding ourselves in the reality of this unreality is what's so cathartic. In the fantasy of the Backrooms, we reclaim what we've lost, and we marinate in our fear of the future. It's both anemoia and empowerment. We allow these inhuman spaces to consume us because it's comforting. We are terrified because we know we are being consumed. It doesn't actually matter what your politics are. Gen Z and millennials from all over the political spectrum seem drawn to the Backrooms. Our varied politics may mean that we struggle to agree on how to fix things, but that doesn't mean we can't agree on how it feels to try and find yourself in the 2020s. Bad, bordering on impossible. In that bizarre way, the Backrooms give me hope. Proof that we do still have common ground to stand on, even if that common ground is an impossible dimension of infinite liminality. In Crete, earthquakes made the ground shake in violent and unexpected ways. Not unlike how our economies keep falling apart every few years. Each recession causes a metaphorical earthquake that can feel impossible to try and explain, especially when you're young. And in Crete, folks took comfort in a story about an imagined labyrinth and the terrors that lie within. Sure, it's scary to think about, but it takes an abstract fear of the unknown and provides a concrete manifestation to focus on. And sure, that manifestation is fantastical and obviously imagined, but having something to focus on like that can help us get through the day and find the bravery to keep exploring, keep trying to find a path forward despite it all. We are all stuck in the Backrooms, and that's comforting to me. Here, in the Backrooms, isolated and alone, we are together. And yet, it's a counterintuitive idea. We are united by a place that's telling us over and over again, you are alone. We have fallen through the cracks and are unmissed. We will not be found beyond these barriers. There's a lot of ink spilled on the loneliness epidemic, and I'm struck by how pathologizing all this language is. Chronic loneliness, like it's a lifelong disease you can never shake. While writing this, I realized I'm never confident that I know whether or not I feel lonely. It's not like being hungry, where it's a clear sensation with a clear answer. Sometimes I feel like I want to be around people, and I find people, and then I feel worse. Or sometimes I don't want to be around people, but that means I should be around people. How am I supposed to navigate that? I think my favorite definition of loneliness I found was about expectation. The feeling of loneliness is when your expectations about the quality of your relationships do not reflect reality. Like when you see someone post about how great they're doing on social media, but you don't feel any closer to them for it and you just kind of feel bad. Or you might feel lonely at a party surrounded by people because you expected people to be more interested in what you had to say.
Or maybe you expected them to be more interesting.
Or I can be lonely after a childhood spent watching sitcoms about groups of friends in the city who've known each other for decades and hang out every night when all of my friends moved away for family or jobs, and I'm lucky if my bestie and I can get together to go to Costco once every few months. These are all mismatches of my expectations and reality. With the internet, I think my expectations for social relationships are constantly in flux. When I enter a new community, I'm unsure. Will I be welcomed with open arms? Will I be shunned for breaking a social rule I didn't know about? And the social norms of online places changes so fast. I still have these same questions of communities I've been a part of for years. It's impossible to know if I'm lonely or not. I think the experience of walking through the Backrooms mirrors the experience of becoming an adult these days. We go from social environments at schools to comparatively asocial office environments. And the disappearance and dangers of the outside world leave us confused and uncertain where to go to find each other. Sure, as adults, we have all this freedom to go where we please, and there's a lot of interesting stuff to explore. But who knows what's around that corner? Or who? And we're left feeling as though we're wandering that empty carapace of what previous generations have built. And it's interesting, but scary, but exciting, but lonely. We're doing all of this alone, and no one is looking for us. The emergent truth of the backrooms I found is that they're about facing the loneliness, together on the internet. They're about telling our own story in that terrifying place, and reclaiming these lost spaces as our own. The backrooms help us mourn our loss of connection, but also find new connections through the things that we make. That's why basically all backrooms media should be honored in some capacity, even Peppa Pig. Our expectations of social spaces have been thrown up in the air and landed in a disorganized mess. All that means is that it's more important now than ever that we find new ways to forge that connection in our current and future technological landscapes. No one is looking for you, so we must now look for each other. Thank you for joining me on this little backrooms jaunt. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, it would mean a lot to me if you liked the video or subscribed to the channel. A huge thank you to the talented individuals who lent me their voice for this video. They're each really talented creators in their own right, so I encourage you to check out their stuff. I have a few other essays like this one if you want to hear more from me. There's a playlist here on my right for you to explore. But otherwise, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and thank you again.